Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Sarah Barker with the Connect Our Elders Empowering Aging podcast. It has been quite some time since I've been with you guys, and I'm very grateful today to have Mike Botelho, who is an owner of Synergy Home Care based in Mendon, Massachusetts, soon to be providing services also in Rhode Island. Today, you're going to learn about who he is, what's his background, why he decided to get into home care, what passion does he have about serving the veterans community as well as non-veterans, what geographic territory he covers, what the process looks like if somebody needs his services, and generally just understand the resources that exist to better serve seniors in our communities. So Mike, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. My pleasure.
You're welcome. All right, well, let's dive right in here. So let's tell the audience a bit about who you are, what is your professional history, and how your journey led you to get into non-medical home care.
I've had sort of a checkered past when it comes to my various vocations, but I find that a lot of the things that I've done have really actually prepped me to be in this seat. And you obviously didn't think about it at the time, but I was in the Navy. I got out of the Navy. I wanted to go to college and just sort of have that college experience. I started working in restaurants, hospitality, waiting tables, things like that. And I see a lot of parallels to, managing clients and the customer service stuff, and even the presence that the caregivers take inside the client's home. You can start to see how some of those things that made me such a fantastic waiter are now also serving me on the home care side, ironically enough. Once I got my big boy job, I started doing mortgages, and I started working more directly with clients that are a lot closer to our demographic in the sense of, decision makers in the household, sort of that sandwich generation that we talk about. Those are the same people that I would provide mortgage services to. Those are the same people now that are finding a need to take care of their parents and, also taking care of their kids and things like that. So again, that former life, you wouldn't make the direct connection, but it did sort of prep me to, kind of understand what it's really like to have a lot of pressure in the house and have to make a big decision. And I always really enjoyed that consultative selling approach where, you're providing solutions for people. You're not really trying to push your product on them. And again, I think that's having that experience has really kind of helped me prepare for this new role. Before I had been removed from the mortgage world, I ended up getting a master's degree in business ethics and compliance. And that also gave me a lot of exposure to the healthcare side of things and some of the ethical situations that we can run into on the home care side. There was some preparation for that, whether I was aware of it at the time, definitely not, because, this new role really, it came out of, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but it was sort of forced upon me. About a year ago, I had my first daughter was born April 3rd. April 10th, I got laid off from my mortgage job in secondary markets. And so now I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? What's the rest of my life going to look like? And looking back on it now, like a lot of these experiences that I had were sort of prepping me to find meaningful work in the community. One of the things that I found that was missing from my mortgage role was just sort of that belief that what I was doing was really going to be beneficial to, not just one person, but the community as a whole, and, kind of finding ways where I can make meaningful work. Those were some of the things that were playing in my head when I started looking at, all right, what's next for me? And honestly, it was really just as simple as doing a little bit of research and kind of seeing where the need's going to be in the future, and what roles are out there that really will reward and will foster ethical leadership, and the type of people that, actually want to do a little bit more for their community than just, take and take and take. And I found home care, and I found that it was relatively easy to get into it. Now, amazingly enough, here I am talking to you.
It's a beautiful response, because I was not, we've talked in recent times about your why, but you never mentioned this whole aspect of bringing this ethical business practice, which of course, we assume all home care companies are, but you actually have a degree in ethical business practices. And then to hear you talk about how you wanted a more fulfilling role. So the way I translate that is I can feel your passion is that you want to impact seniors' lives in your community and make an overall difference in your community. I'll often say, we tend to think that home care is just for the care recipient, right? Just for the senior. It's for the whole family, right? So the impact that you can have in your community is actually huge by providing your services. Okay, so you fell into it because of a life circumstance, but things happen for a reason, right? How did you decide to choose Synergy Home Care?
Well, I would like to say that there was a lot more into it other than just following a couple links and just sort of wormholing my way to Synergy. But there was some conscious thought into how I can best serve veterans. And one of the things that stood out to me on the Synergy side was the national partnership that they have with the VA. I mean, Sarah, I've been going to the VA since I got out of the service, and I have a lot of respect for the people in the VA facilities. And I thought to myself, like, if I can position myself to where I can also help veterans, like, what more is there for me to really think about? And I did, when I was looking at franchising options, I was looking at a few of the different bigger home care players. And I was also looking at franchise businesses that were sort of in the same or under the same umbrella, but were not home care. And to be honest with you, businesses that are probably going to be a little bit less intense, a little bit less labor, demanding on my personal time, probably a lot more profitable, quicker than what you would see in home care and what I'm kind of expecting and living through. But I kept going back to home care. I kept going back to the idea of being able to create real jobs for people, being able to actually say, I'm doing something in the community that the community needs, and being able to provide a service that not everybody can do. Like, I think a lot of people can, set up shop and say, hey, I'm running a home care agency. I have the best caregivers, but to be really out there doing it and meeting people in the community, and looking at it from the lens of like, all right, you watch the news, like, there's just so much crazy stuff going on. Like, what can one person really do to make a difference and make things better? Well, you can start small. You can look at the people around you. You can look at the community that you live in, that you shop in. And that's where, for me, that's where I want to make my difference. Like, I don't want to worry about the big stuff. I want to worry about the client that I helped, free up time for her so that she can go live her life while, we're taking care of mom. So that to me, I mean, that's really powerful stuff.
And be the daughter, not the full-time caregiver, right? So that way they can preserve that relationship between the two of them. Now, I can already hear from you as you're talking about the way that your agency is going to serve clients, right? Like, I think the agencies that do the best and have the most impact, like what you're talking about, are the ones that don't look at it as this transactional type of service, right? They take it to heart that they're dealing with people's lives, the care recipient and the families, right, that we support. So I know from meeting with you that you do go above and beyond. For instance, could you share with the audience about a gentleman, right, no names included, a gentleman recently referred to you who is a veteran who needs to go to the VA to get the process started for community care, and what you are doing personally in this situation to help this veteran?
Yeah, so there's a gentleman that's local. He's in one of the facilities nearby. And he was referred to me for more of the companion side of things. He, at the end of the day, he likes to go out to eat. He likes to have dinner. He wants to go out with his buddies. They're all military. And, my initial thought was, you know what, I like to eat. I'll go with you. Let's just make it about that. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be, like you said, transactional. Like, let's go find a local restaurant and we'll go out to eat. And then that has now turned into him needing some assistance with a ride up to the VA hospital in Worcester. And for me, it's like, this is a service that we would normally charge for. Yes. I am running a business. Yes. But at the same time, it's like, again, it's just a vet helping another vet. I'm trying not to think much more beyond that. He needs a ride. I haven't been up to Worcester. I haven't met any of the VA people up there. So why not? It's not a big deal for me to do stuff like that. And it's not something where it's like, hey, look what I did. You know what I mean? It's more about like, all right, it just makes sense. I have the time. Let's do it.
Right.
I think we kind of get into our routines and we get into our spaces, and everything kind of, has to have that transactional value. And sometimes the value is more than what you're actually just going to see,
And like we talked about, right? So, I work with you on the business development and side of things, but going this far out of the kindness of your heart. And that's the thing that I think is going to make this powerful for you, is that it is genuine. It is authentic, right? But the natural payoff for doing this is that you're strengthening your relationship with this facility, and you are getting to go into the VA, right? But I think that the reason why it's working out that way is because you're coming from the sincere place of wanting to help this person, know?
And I think that what you're mentioning is that the genuine desire to actually care and do good work does show through, and it makes up for a lot of shortcomings that a new owner will run into. And that was good advice that I got from one of the other Synergy owners, was like, they'll see that your heart's in the right place, and that's going to make up for a lot of the, maybe paperwork mix-ups, and I don't have the best system yet for this or that. Like, lead from the heart. And so far, that's been really good advice.
And we're not going to call them shortcomings. They are learning opportunities.
Right. Yeah,
right?
It's steep hockey stick that we talk about in this business, and I'm riding it for sure.
So let's talk about ways, how does a home care agency tend to receive opportunities? So I know you're getting opportunities to serve seniors, right, and their families direct from the VA, right, because you're contracted the community care network. So any veterans listening right now, or any adult children, or anybody for that matter, who knows an elder veteran, let's have a conversation with them about enrolling in the VA and seeing if they could benefit from community care, right? I find that a lot of veterans just do not know that they could even get this resource. And it's the same thing with aid and attendance. And by the way, you can stack both of those together if they qualify for aid and attendance. So little pointer there for you. But what are some other places, Mike, where anybody listening here that loves your heart for serving seniors and says, I want to help that guy out, so let me connect him to somebody in the community? So let's clarify for the audience. It's Mendon, Massachusetts. And then what are some other towns that would trigger people's thoughts?
So I guess for those that are local, I service the greater Blackstone Valley area. That's probably the best Massachusetts reference. So, those towns would include Blackstone, Mendon, Douglas, Uxbridge, Northbridge, Sutton, sort of that rural tract between the major highways. That's where I wanted to be. And I'm also opening in Rhode Island as well. And that really is just an extension of the same territory. So again, it's in between the major highways. And that, I guess I'll wait until Rhode Island opens before I start rattling off that list of names. Also, Webster, Mass is another place where I have good relationships, and, we're looking to find people. And, that educational component of just kind of, especially on the veteran side, letting them know, what you had mentioned is the help is there. It's just a matter of finding a way to get that help. And, you can probably relate to this too. Like when I got out of the military, it was before 9/11. There wasn't as much resources directed at the separating veteran and how to get them up and running. So, I've been there from, how do I figure out how to enroll in community college on my own? How do I access my GI Bill? I've always kind of had to have that connection to the VA for a lot of different things that have come up in my life. And I want to be able to share that with other people and be able to say, hey, there is help out there. So, as you mentioned, veterans, number one priority for our agency is to try to help as many veterans as we can. for me, that's a natural fit. One of the things I like about Synergy is they really do focus on the care. And that's something, when I got into this, I said, I want to be with a home care agency that's not just, sort of a glorified cleaning service. Like, I want to be with somebody that actually values quality care. And Synergy gives me a great platform to help not only seniors, but we can also do childcare. They look at programs specific towards specific medical conditions. For example, somebody that's recovering from a stroke, somebody that's going through cancer treatment. These are populations that need help also, and they kind of get, left because they're not fitting into that, seniors got to get, and I want to be open to that type of care and to be able to build out a roster that can satisfy a lot of the different needs of the community. And I think, Synergy, that's one of the things that I really like about being connected to this, this agency.
I'm glad that you clarified that, right? Because we have used the term senior care, but what I need people in the audience to understand is that there are adults with disabilities who can benefit from Synergy Home Care Services. Now, you also mentioned childcare. Can you clarify for the audience what you mean by that? Is this typical childcare like a nanny, or are you talking about children with disabilities that need caregiving services?
Yeah, I mean, I would say both, Sarah, because when I'm recruiting and when I'm meeting some of these caregivers out there, the ones that have experience with childcare have experience, by and large with, I don't know how to phrase it correctly, but I would say higher level childcare may be a good way to put it. So, these would be children that have intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, autism, things of that nature. And then, so we can place a caregiver that can provide direct support to that family based on their child's condition. But we can also roll it back to just as simple as, look at my own situation. Fridays, I go to my office to do my job, and my wife has a half day Friday, so she's stuck with our little one. It would be great to have just a 4 or 5 hour block of somebody that can come in and basically perform the same type of supervision that we would perform, so that my wife can get out and get her nails done and do whatever she's got to do. Not everybody needs a big chunk of childcare. And again, going back to my own situation, when my wife and I were looking at possible child care options, we were finding, 3-day minimums, things like that. And that's not a fit for everybody. So that's something that we're going to explore to see if there's a need for, kind of the short-term childcare solutions. Maybe it's just 1 day a week that, it doesn't work out. So here we come.
That's really good to know. I think this is the first that I've heard that Synergy Home Care can do both, right? Senior care, adults with disabilities, children with disabilities, and then children without. And it's really the parents need, like your typical child care sort of service. So you got a big spectrum that you can cover of needs. That's impressive. Now, you had mentioned that you really leaned, or you chose Synergy Home Care because you care about working for a brand that makes quality care a priority. And then you mentioned that there are some specific specialty programs. And I just read an article this morning from Stephen Tweed about the value of an agency having specialty programs. So you mentioned post-stroke care. What are some of the other programs?
Well, what we're seeing now, especially with our Vietnam era veterans, is a lot of cases of Parkinson's disease. This is something that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution for this family. Parkinson's, for those that have not been exposed to it and really kind of seen the nasty side of it, I mean, it's a tough one. And those individuals need specialized care. The same thing with somebody that's recovering from a stroke. Like, this may be a short-term solution to have a caregiver in there, but they're going to have different needs than somebody that's needing some companionship. Memory care, again, another big one. I mean, a lot of the clients that we work with are in different stages of cognitive decline, and they need specialized focus on ways to kind of improve the situation and stretch out that, maximize their cognitive ability while it remains. And that's one of the things about Synergy is like they will provide the training to specialize a caregiver that shows an interest in pursuing that type of path. And it's certainly something that we encourage on our side. A lot of them, especially, with personal experiences, for example, I have a caregiver, she's had cancer in her family and it's something that hits close to home, so if we can give her the extra support and give her the confidence to go into somebody that, is going through chemotherapy and needs some companionship for those 3-4 hour visits that they're just sitting there, it helps to have a caregiver that has a direct connection.
Right. They can empathize with the situation. And I know you have a nurse,
Yes.
right, as part of your team. And earlier you had mentioned that she does the care plans. Now, I want the audience to understand, when you're talking about these specialty programs and you're talking about identifying care professionals who have additional training, right, in a certain disease, right, or a certain, or working with a client who's going through chemotherapy, and everything that comes along with that, that nurse is doing your care plans. And so it sounds to me that you guys are taking this very in-depth approach to looking at who is this individual, this client that we've been entrusted to serve. What are they going through? What are their needs? And then your nurse is looking at the care plan, but then you guys are hand selecting caregivers that are truly the best fit. And it's, it's so important to do that customized matchmaking process because we're talking about two different individuals and personalities and needs.
Yeah. And I can tell you, in the short time that I've been doing this, every home visit that I've made has been different. So like, as you say, like it's not a one size fits all solution for everybody. Everybody's needs are so different. And we're non-medical home care, right? We're not medical, but all of the people that we're caring for, by and large, have some type of medical condition. So we need to be conscious of it. I want my caregivers to have the confidence. And that's a big piece that the RN brings to my team. It's yes, she's very involved in the care plans, but she's also a resource for the caregivers to say, hey, you know what? I've never worked with somebody that has Alzheimer's. What do you know about that? What are some of the medical things that I need to be aware of, or, some of the conditions that we should expect to see. And she's a great resource. And I think, first and foremost, she does the care plans, but close second is direct caregiver support. And that's really,
so she's providing the oversight, which I think is so crucial, right? To make sure that the delivery of the care plan goes well, right? It's not just direct support to the families and, receiving their feedback, but those care professionals have a sounding board and they have somebody to help guide them to continue to improve, right, their efforts to serve the client. I think it's wonderful how you guys have this structured in your agency.
Yeah.
So kind of back to where you can get clients. And I really want the audience, because anybody listening or anybody that watches this later when it's on YouTube, help get Mike connected to people in his operating territory. And you said that's Blackstone.
Blackstone Valley is what people around here would recognize.
Okay, so Blackstone Valley, Massachusetts. So what we're looking for, right, is hospital case managers, skilled nursing facility, social workers. You had mentioned, right, you got a special program for people who are struggling with the diagnosis of cancer. So if anybody in the audience knows any oncologists, right, or somebody who works in an oncologist's office, any aging life care managers in Mike's territory, senior living advisors, otherwise known as placement professionals, and of course, right, our legal financial people. So if any of you guys know estate and trust attorneys in the Blackstone Valley, Massachusetts area, wealth managers, any corporate trust officers, right, those types of professionals, and these are the people, right, that we're looking to get Mike connected with. So, all right, so now let's talk about the process. So if I were to call you today, Mike, and say, I listened to the podcast and I realized I should probably start exploring options from my mom, right, for care. And matter of fact, we've actually been struggling with this for years, and I think it's time I do something about this. What does that look like from the moment I call you to learn about your services?
Yeah, so I mean, that's really the first impression that we can make is that phone call that comes in. We try to always make sure that we have time to set aside to listen to this client and give them the opportunity to express what they're going through. Because again, it's not just as simple as like, hey, my mom needs help. Like there's a lot of backstory there. And sometimes these clients or potential clients or family caregivers, they need the opportunity to really express what's going on. And the more information that we can get, the easier it is for us to really, determine whether or not we can provide a solution, because we may not be the answer, but we can at least direct them to the right resources.
Mm-hmm.
If it does seem like it's somebody that we're able to help, we're going to listen. We're going to figure out, what their priorities are. We're going to come out and we're going to meet them at the home. Anybody else that's involved in the client care, whether it's other family members, whether they have different outside specialists coming in, whatever it may be, we want to try to get everybody on the same page, figure out what that client really needs, and then we would, present what we think would be a solution based on their budget, based on their needs, whatever it is that we can do to kind of make that match. And at least if we don't get that client, I don't worry about that. I worry about they hang up the phone and they feel like they made a meaningful call, or, we came out, we did a visit, hopefully they learned something from that visit. That's kind of the approach that we take when we're meeting with somebody. We try to customize as much as we can. We don't set minimums. We don't set like, it has to be this, it has to be that. We try to work with what we have available, and much like you, Sarah, we try to meet people where they are, and just kind of come up with a solution from there. Once we've determined that we have a fit and it is something that would benefit them, and the family agrees, they want the help, they need the help, at that point, we would start matching up a qualified caregiver to come out. We look at availability. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're going to find somebody that's relatively close, that's going to be able to commit to that shift, because, again, we recognize the importance of, even if it's only a 4-hour time block, I mean, that's huge for that family caregiver, just to be able to count on that time. When we are ready to introduce a caregiver, it's going to be me with that caregiver to make that warm introduction. And then, the best way I've found for us to learn is just getting feedback from the caregivers, feedback from the other professionals, feedback from the family, and when possible, feedback from the client, because it is about them. They may not be able to make all of their own decisions, but we want to involve them as much as possible. And in care, for me, it always evolves. Like we're always looking at, all right, what did we do well this week? What was the client receptive to? How can we expand on that? How can we make care better? I mean, this is where we shine, and that's kind of the way that we try to do it.
I can see your customer service background, because you had started out sharing how, right, your experiences are actually, translating into what you're doing now. And that's kind of was my point about, let's move away from this transactional experience for clients that home care companies have, and you're actually putting it into action, which is, no, this is a customer centric, right, client centric, and this warrants a high level of customer service. I mean, Mike, the fact that you are the one that's going out and introducing the caregiver, right, for the first shift is huge, right? I feel like the families can have a sense of trust and comfort. Now, let's make sure the audience knows, as the agency grows, we are not promising that Mike is always going to be the one, but I assure you there will be somebody in his place who is equally trustworthy to provide that level of experience. But the point that I want you to take away from this is that his agency, Synergy Home Care in Mendon, Massachusetts, is actually personally introducing the caregiver to the client and to the family. And that's
we're out there too, Sarah. I mean, it's, I'm not an absentee owner. I'm very much involved in the day-to-day operations of this business. I want to see it grow. I want to see it grow the right way at the right pace. We want to make sure we have that foundation in place that gives us that staying power, because we're not servicing the community if we're not here 6 months from now. So I think we're building it the right way. And, we're listening to smart people whenever we have the opportunity to. We're taking their feedback and we're incorporating the best practices into our business practices.
Yes, you definitely. I mean, I feel like you're making progress already based on the meeting that we had earlier.
Somehow, despite myself, Sarah, we are making progress.
It's very, very exciting, and personally exciting to me because you're a fellow Northeasterner, born and raised in Maine. And, while your location is 3 hours away, I'm still like, I'm happy to know, right, that you guys are there. And maybe, right, anybody that's in my small town in Maine or the district, SAD 55 district, if you guys have friends or you've got family members that are living in the Blackstone Valley area, now you know Mike, and you can reach out to him to ask questions about care resources. So I find sometimes, anybody listening to this and they're like, yeah, my mom needs help or my dad needs help, and they're not going to listen to me. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to live another day in dealing with this situation. Or, and so they just don't call. And then the struggle goes on and on and on, until the point comes where they cannot avoid having a conversation, right? The crisis happens.
Yeah.
What I always recommend is that it is never too soon to get educated on the resources that exist. So, I'd like you to chime in on that sentiment as far as, even if they don't need your services today or tomorrow, are you willing to have a conversation with someone about resources?
Yeah, I mean, and I feel that's our obligation, as part of the community health network. You kind of have to be willing to provide resources, even if there's not an immediate return, because again, it's the bigger picture, and I don't lose sight of that in that idea of trying to do the small things to make the world around me a little bit better. And if that's just pointing somebody in the right direction, I think, to your point, there is definitely, I don't think there's a too soon. I think there's definitely a too late. There's I'm waiting until my marriage is on the rocks and my siblings aren't speaking to me anymore. And, we're burning through money. This is unfortunately a lot of the times when we're having the conversation about home care, when, if we can at least let them know that this is a resource, because, that was kind of another, not to get off topic too much, but I went into this business thinking everybody knew what we did, but they don't. I'm starting to find that people really don't know that there are businesses out there like mine that can provide, sort of that direct support that they're having a hard time getting from other health, from more traditional health facilities. And, most importantly, they want to stay at home, and we can help provide that. But I think the point is, is to get the information that you need as quickly as possible so that you can make that decision, as they may not be, especially if the client isn't going to be receptive to having strangers in their house, start introducing that concept early, get those tough questions out of the way, let me come out and have that conversation, at least start to set the tone of what home care is going to look like, and also be able to help them see the benefits. Sometimes, especially on the client side, if they're resistant, sometimes they just need to understand, hey, your daughter, I mean, she's at the end of her rope, you know what I mean? And this care, look at it from her perspective. I mean, it's going to be a big help for her. And I think it just
or
comes.
the well spouse, right? The woman, the wife, who is teeny tiny, right?
Yeah.
And has a husband who's maybe 100 pounds heavier than she is and much taller, right? And now not only do we have this exhausting, and what I'm saying is, of course they want to care for each other, but there comes a point in time where it actually becomes risky, right?
Yeah.
Where that family caregiver, whether it's the spouse or an adult child, right? It's so daunting, even physically, right? For the well spouse, or now you've got the emotional stress and the mental anguish, and and then, right, if it's a disease and it's starting to decline, now we're dealing with anticipatory grief. There are just so many aspects to this, right? And we can help these families navigate this. And that's really what we're trying to say, is that it's never too soon to,
Yeah.
if you're in the area and you need guidance and you need to understand what exists, it's never too soon to reach out to Mike and just have these conversations, because then you're actually in control, right, of what you want to have happen, instead of crisis happens and you're jumping through hoops to figure out a plan. And to your point, Mike, take it from here, but establishing that comfort and that trust. If you just want to learn about services, right, Mike will meet with you, even if you don't need it from a year from now, but you could start introducing Mike to your parents, so that way when the time comes, they have a trust for Synergy Home Care, right? And so now they're going to be more open to allowing the caregivers in the home.
Yeah. And another point, Sarah, is like we can also introduce other resources early that may help in the long run, that may have nothing to do with Synergy Home Care, but are part of that care continuum that they may need. And it just kind of gives us the opportunity to make sure that all bases are covered.
You're
earlier
being
the better.
there. Absolutely. And this is what I love. And I love to hear you talk about it in this way, is that you're making a choice to operate as this elder care advisor, senior care advisor, like care advisor, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's so important to take that advisory level approach versus I'm out here just trying to sling caregiving hours, right? That's the transactional. So I am so impressed, Mike, with the heart that you're bringing to growing your agency. And I have no doubts that before long, like, people are going to know you in the community and say, you know what, it's Mike with Synergy Home Care that I want caring for my loved one. So with that said, a recap: Blackstone Valley, Massachusetts, and then soon moving into Rhode Island, right?
Yeah. So for the Rhode Islanders out there, Northwest Rhode Island, Woonsocket, if you know these places, Smithfield, Burrillville, where I live, Lincoln, the northwest part of the state is basically my triangle, and that's where we're going to establish our Rhode Island presence.
What is the best way for someone to connect with you? I know you have a LinkedIn profile, so I'll make sure I share that when I reshare this recording, but they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yep, they can find our business page on Facebook as well, Synergy Home Care of Mendon.
Okay.
They can go to our website and they can interact with us through the website. They can schedule a home assessment if they want to go that far. They can learn a little bit more about us and my team. And, the good old fashioned phone always works because we answer it. So,
and what's that telephone number?
It's 508-388-4600.
Say it again for the audience in case they were writing down.
508-388-4600.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add before we go ahead and sign off here?
No, I mean, I think, you've been a great help, and, really starting to, because I have the ideas and I have the vision and I have the understanding of the value of what I'm doing, but to have, people that know, and can kind of take it to that next level and say, yes, this really is impactful, and focus on this and do these things. I mean, I think we're going to get there.
We are. We're already making progress. It's been what, 2 weeks?
Get there. Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mike, I thank you so much for being my guest today on the
Thank
Connector
you for
Elders
having me.
Aging. It's been, gosh, I think it's been a couple months since I've done one of these. So thanks for getting me back on the ball, because I do think it's important to start making sure that communities across the United States know who to reach out in their respective communities that they can trust and they can feel a comfort with, and the people that have a heart for providing the care. So again, really, really thankful that you're my guest, and I will be talking to you soon.
Thank you so much, Sarah.